Good morning, everyone. The inquiry's resumed. It's inquiry day 6, and we're today discussing in a roundtable fashion conditions and also site visit arrangements. So it's going to be a morning session. I don't anticipate a long session this morning to do that. There are one person that I have knowledge of who would like to raise some points on behalf of an interested party. This was touched on yesterday in terms of allowing members of the public to have a say, but also drawing a line in terms of fairness with the appellants. So I'm going to allow a member of the public to raise the points they wish to make as an interested party. Having said that, there's going to be no further opportunities for such commentary because tomorrow will be my site visit and the next day will be closings from the council side and the appellant, and there'll be no further discussions of that nature because of those timetable arrangements. So I'm going to invite comments from the person who wants to speak. And beyond that, I think a lot of people already here have already had an opportunity to speak, so I'm not seeking to repeat any of the other information. So would the person like to come forward, introduce themselves to the inquiry, make the points they want to make, and then that will be the record. In terms of anything in writing, I'm not inviting any written submissions. There has been one or two oral contributions, then followed up by a written statement. I'm not requesting that information to the inquiry. That has previously been volunteered, so no further written comments will be accepted into the inquiry.
So just well, no comment speaks. Could I possibly raise that? I've got a few housekeeping matters.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just a few housekeeping matters, one of which is relevant to what the lady might have to say. So the first one, as I indicated yesterday, Dr. Owen has been working, I think, frankly, fairly heroically to get a note out responding to the flurry of items we had both orally and in writing yesterday that touched on her evidence. There was another representation received from PINS this morning at 8 a.m. I think from Mr. Boothfield. In fairness to him, he'd actually sent it on Friday. I don't know why it was not sent on until this morning, but there we are. Anyway, Dr. Owen, I hope, I'll double check, but I hope is actually listening again now. And if the lady says anything that is relevant to her, she can sweep that up. So I am hopeful that Dr. Owen will be in a position to provide something in writing, which will go to your case officer at PINS today on those points. That's the first thing. Second point is my own friend, Mr. Grant, and I have been discussing, as you know, the question of what Mr. Whitehouse didn't say regarding present capacity, local need. We have a transcript of the relevant sections of his cross, which straddles the very end of day 2 and the very beginning of day 3. It is agreed as sufficiently accurate, not accurate in every word or phrase, but sufficiently accurate. It's only about 7 pages, so that can be going to that can go to you as an agreed document, and we'll organise that. And the third is site visit. We are almost very nearly there on an agreed itinerary, and I hope, sir, that if at the end of the conditions session you perhaps gave us 10 minutes possibly, we put our heads together and return to discuss site visit arrangements with an agreed document. So thank you.
Yeah, no objections to that.
Sir.
Yeah, and all noted in terms of the other points. Would the member of public like to introduce themselves again just to the inquiry and then make the points they wish to make, please?
Yep, certainly. My name is Natasha Marco, and I am speaking on behalf of Sophie Alnoa, the manager at Silks Farm Day Nursery and Preschool. As Sophie is unable to be here today, she's asked me, as a parent with children at the nursery, to read this statement on her behalf. Silks Farm would like to express our strong opposition to MVAR's proposed development, which would have a clear negative impact on the nursery and families we serve. One of the unique features about our nursery is the rural Cambridgeshire setting. We have 1.7 acres of outdoor space, including a forest school, newly renovated play area, an orchard growing apples that are eaten and taken home by children, as well as a vegetable patch, which we use to teach the children about growing food. Envar is in extremely close proximity, being only 0.6 miles to the nursery, with no structures in between, only fields. Silks Farm Nursery serves as a critical hub for families in our community, providing care for 136 children aged 3 months to 5 years, as well as providing employment to 32 members of staff. The proposed development poses a significant threat to the health and well-being of the children, staff, and families we care for. As an outdoor forest school, we pride ourselves in providing access to natural environments for learning and development. However, the proximity to the proposed facility and the potential emissions would directly impact our ability to fulfill this commitment. Of particular concern is the potential impact on air quality and health and well-being. Children are known to be particularly sensitive receptors, and of our 136 children, 25% are under 18 months old. Not only would the development impact health and well-being, but it could impact our ability to meet requirements set by our regulator, Ofsted, for outside access. Free flow from the indoors to outdoors throughout the age groups is integral to our pedagogical approach, and the children spend approximately 85% of the day outdoors. Our establishment caters for a diverse range of children, including those with specific health needs such as asthma. We currently have 12 children and 3 staff members having inhalers on site. Children and asthmatics are known to be particularly susceptible to the adverse effects of air pollution and particularly particulate matter. You've already heard about the potential impacts of air pollution on sensitive groups and the well-known Ella Adu Kissy Deborah case. During the course of her illness, she was exposed to nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter in excess of World Health Organization guidelines. Here, the coroner uses the WHO guidelines as the indicator of health effects of air pollution, not air quality standards. Furthermore, the increased traffic generated by Envar poses an additional risk to the safety of our families and staff. Our nursery is located on a busy road, and we have already experienced accidents involving both parents and staff members. A previous incident involving one of our staff members resulting in lifelong disabilities serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by the current road conditions. As a community-orientated establishment, we've taken proactive measures to mitigate these risks, including the fundraising and purchase of an automated external defibrillator. However, the addition of further traffic congestion and potential hazards associated with the Envar facility would only exacerbate these concerns, putting the safety of our community at even greater risk. Perceived harm from the development is already having a tangible impact on our business. 10% of prospective parent tours completed in the last 6 months chose not to enrol at Silks Farm Nursery, specifically citing the health concerns of this proposed development. The development will also have a profound impact on staffing. This is against the backdrop of a known recruitment crisis in our industry. This very real challenge in the early years sector is already recognised by the government, as it has a clear impact on the overall economy. There are new schemes to expand the early years workforce to ensure childcare spaces are available. Nurseries in England are continuing to close at an alarming rate. According to the National Day Nurseries Association, 50% more closures were recorded in the academic year of 2022 to 2023. With new government funding to support families being implemented nationwide from April 2024, it's vital for early years spaces to be available. Staff at the setting have already raised concerns over the appellant's plans, and it's a huge concern that this would impact their employment status decisions with Silks Farm. Moreover, the development would have further negative impacts on our local economy and the families of the 136 children who rely on healthcare provision to allow them to work. When completing internal surveys, it was recorded that 98% of families access childcare at Silks Farm due to work commitments. As ratios of staff to children must be adhered to under Ofsted governing body guidelines, a decrease in staff would decrease the availability of childcare spaces. This will impact revenue to uphold a sustainable business at the core of the community. We believe MVAR's claimed job creation benefits are overshadowed by the significant repercussions, such as potential loss of employment for nursery staff and the inability for parents to work if they cannot send their children to our nursery. Considering these significant concerns, we urge you to uphold the decision to reject MVAR's proposal. The health, safety, and well-being of our children, families, and staff must take precedent over any self-serving developments in our vicinity. Thank you.
So Ms. Marco was reading from a document. I don't know if that's already been circulated or if it's available to be entered onto as an inquiry document.
I don't have it as an inquiry document and I don't have an electronic version.
So Sophie, the manager at Silks Farm, is going to send it to Helen.
Thank you. Are we content then for that to be incorporated within the full document?
I did reference this at the beginning and I wasn't minded to accept anything further. There's been quite a flurry of information coming in written form, but is there a particular need?
No, if I hadn't recalled that, but if that's if that is the consistent approach, then I'm quite content with it.
Well, some of the statements have already been volunteered, as you know, and those have been copied to the council and to the appellant. As regards to everything else read out today, the oral record will be enough for me as the inspector. So I'm not requesting any further information, but it's not consistent with the other statements received that were volunteered. I haven't requested those. So in that context, I'm not asking for any additional copies of written communication.
Okay, so we'll treat it as oral evidence, but we won't
Yeah.
load anything up onto the core document list.
No, because there's no other document available.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for all of those comments. I've noted those. I'm going to move on now to conditions. So a compiled list of conditions have been submitted in a statement of common ground. Going to ask the council to give an overview of those conditions, take me through each one. It's going to be roundtable discussion on aspects of the conditions as we go. If the council's representative could start that process, please.
Thank you very much. As I indicated, I think in advance of today, Ms. Fitch is going to take the lead on that process.
Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, I'd just like to start by reiterating something you said earlier on in the examination, just for the benefit of those that may be watching online or also sitting in the room. Just because we're talking about the conditions doesn't mean that you've made a decision about this yet, and this is for us to go through and talk about that. I just thought it'd be useful for those watching online particularly to know
yes,
that.
that's correct. It doesn't undermine the council's position. This is just standard procedure.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so just really to give an overview, if I start with an overview and then we can perhaps go to any specific condition. The council effectively created and produced 33 proposed conditions for this application that were informed by technical specialists and were shared with the applicant, now appellant, and agreed before taking planning to planning committee. Of those 33 proposed planning conditions that you have in front of you, sir, in the Appendix 4, 3 relate to standard controls, so very much commencement, site area and approved plans. 4 relate to monitoring purposes, the main point being really to monitor and manage key issues such as surface water storage, waste inputs, noise and HCV movements. And these were created very much in mind with the extant permissions that already exist for the site to make sure that they could be controlled sufficiently. 3 relate to surface water storage and drainage controls, both in the operational stage and the construction stage of development. 7 relate to highway capacity and safety measures in place. 10 relate to residential amenity, including protection of animals and relate to things like noise and light. 4 relate to landscape and visual amenity, and 2 relate to environmental protection and sustainability measures. So rather than necessarily going through all 33, sir, I don't know if you want to give me a steer as to whether you do want us to do that or whether you want to focus on specific ones.
I'm happy for you to group them. There does need to be some recognition of what we're discussing. So I believe some of them are standard conditions, and in relation to standard conditions, say commencement of the development, etc., timings, that could be, you know, I don't need detailed discussion of things like that, but the more bespoke conditions, shall we say, I would like some reference from the council's representative as to why they've been applied and the reasoning behind them. So if you would like to go through the conditions on that basis, I know you've grouped them in that particular way. So if you could take me through the conditions in that way, and then I can ask questions as we go.
So can I suggest this format that Ms. Fitch just outlined 7 groupings. The first of those was site controls. Perhaps to make life easy, she might refer to those as group 1, group 2, group 3. And then for each group, say which are the conditions by way of number that are relevant, and then give you the overview for that group.
Yes. Yeah.
So the group 1 would be the site controls.
Okay, so as stated, group 1 site controls relating to the monitoring purposes. So of the conditions in front of you, I've put these down as conditions 2 for the commencement of phases of development, 8, the record of waste inputs, 19 for noise monitoring, and 24 for the record of HCV movements. So just to take you through those individually, the commencement of phases of development are very much there in relation to the control that will be needed to monitor and compliance purposes for the site. They're broken down into different points, and they link then to other conditions. So points 1 to 3 in that control need there to regulate and control the surface water storage lagoons that link to specifically condition 3. Point 4 controls the ecological requirements linked to demolition. Point 5 controls use of the waste transfer storage station, biomass storage and pellet production. Point 6, as you'll see, dry anaerobic digestion plant, and point 7, healthcare waste energy facility, or the HERF has been referred to. So we can, as we go through those particular conditions, you'll see how they link back. Condition 8 is a record of waste inputs, and this links specifically to condition 6 for waste throughput and 7 for the waste catchment area. Condition 19 for noise monitoring links to 17 for noise mitigation and also to 18 for noise limits. And condition 24, which is a record of HGV movements, links to 23 for vehicle movements. Now, in creating these conditions, what we did is we worked with our monitoring and enforcement colleagues within the team to assess how the site operates at the moment, what those extant permissions are, and what controls would need to be in place for us to understand the point at which the development commences, because there are elements of a phased commencement on the site, and also gives the ability for them within their monitoring and control and the reports that they create, the ability to link back and have the necessary access to the records from the applicant. So I'll stop there and just see if you want to ask any specific questions on those.
No, I'm going to suggest something slightly different. I know we're grouping them in terms of site controls. I'm going to refer to the order that I've got just in case we miss anything. Thank you for that introduction, and that is useful. Do the appellants have any comments on aspects of the conditions? They are agreed matters, so.
They are, sir, and that's a very helpful introduction to them. The only thing additionally I would say is that they do reflect consultation responses as well. So, for instance, the Highway Authority, there's a specific consultation response, and that's addressed in the condition as well. So, But yes, I did wonder in terms, is it just worth going through almost going through the list, because I'm trying to tick them off and trying to keep following, and it's just, it's very sensible what you're saying. It's just actually, do we just tick them off and just do it that way? Then we're sure where we're up to, if you like.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to take you up on that offer. I think that's going to be a more easier way of doing it, shall we say. So
That's my fault. I set the ball rolling on that a bit.
So the first two conditions, really, commencement of development and then the phasing, those aren't really contentious at my side, and these are agreed matters. So condition 3 relates to surface water storage lagoons, and you have just referenced these to me. Could you just explain the nature of condition 3, just so I'm 100% on that?
Yes, sir. So condition 3 relates to what would have been my group 2, which is one of 3 surface water storage related conditions. What you will have seen on here is the fact that there are already surface water lagoons on the site. And as part of the proposals, they're looking to move that equivalent storage capacity. What officers have done in this particular condition is to ensure that before the existing lagoons are decommissioned, there is the appropriate storage capacity in place.
And that comes from a statutory consultee in terms of its origin, yeah? Is that right?
Sorry, sir. Yes, that would have included the lead local flood authority, but also the consideration by officers when we're looking at the monitoring and control purposes of the site as well.
Okay, I've got no further comments on that. The next condition, condition 4, could you just explain that, please?
Yes, sir. So I actually grouped this as part of the standard controls. So that won't give that a group at the moment. Effectively, what we were being clear is when we talk about the site area, specifically what we are referring to. So this will relate to specific plans. So when we go through the conditions, it's very clear as to what reference we are making to in relation to the site area and also the MFAR site.
And then moving on to condition 5, there's a series of approved plans and documents. Is there any particular reason of the split between condition 4 and 5? Could it not be combined?
So this is a standard practice that we do at Cambridgeshire. One could probably find examples elsewhere where they've merged the two, but actually if you look at the way that we set up our conditions, where there is any clarification on site area, and there is, in particular, I can think of a couple of waste sites in particular in the area where we do split them, but that's the only reason why the two are split. So again, you've quite rightly alluded to the fact that condition 5 will be seen as one of my standard controls.
The appellant want to raise anything?
No, not at all. I think it is actually quite sensible to split 4 and 5. 4's doing a slightly different job. Just it's almost the avoidance of doubt. This is a site it relates to, and then 5 is actually what are the approved plans. So again, there's no doubt about making sure it's developed in accordance with them.
Okay, thank you. And condition 6, you've already touched on this, but that relates to the waste throughput. Could you just further explain that, please?
Yeah, I actually haven't touched upon 6.
Oh, sorry.
It was 8 I was referring to, but you're quite right. So it does link to 6.
Right.
So yeah. So in the relation to this one, I actually put this under what would have been group 3, which relates to highway capacity and also safety measures that are put in place for this particular one. It also very much feeds through from the extant planning permission. So I think I have reference to CD 7.1.2, which shows how we've moved the conditions across, if you like, from the extant permission to this one. The idea being that we put a maximum throughput for the site as a whole, which is 200,000. And in the case of this one, which won't be on the extant permission, we then make reference to the 12,000 tonnes of waste for, I'll call it a HERF for want of a better word, as it's been used during this examination, just to control that in any 12-month period.
And The appellant's position hasn't changed on these figures mentioned in the condition.
No, it hasn't. As it's been explained, it is effectively an import of condition 4 of its predecessor, if you like. The only slight change is, and that's where condition 4 of this one here is effectively saying here is the site. So the predecessor actually had that as part of this condition, but it's effectively the same as the two read together. So yes, with the Herf addition, yes, of course, yes, exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. And condition 7, please.
Yeah, so very much in a similar way. Condition 7 will again link into what would have been that group 3 relating to highway capacity and safety measures. Again, this very much carries across from the extant planning permission. The only difference is we have in this instance agreed with the applicant ahead of going to planning committee that we would remove reference to the reasonable endeavours section. Otherwise, it pretty much carries across word for word. Don't know if there's any other questions on that one.
No, I've got no questions on that. And records of waste inputs, that seems a standard condition, is that right?
Yeah, it's something that we actually do quite a lot in Cambridgeshire, particularly on the waste facility. So we have a way of monitoring what's going through. Because we have a team of monitoring and enforcement officers, this is one of the standard conditions that we agree through with them as well. So they have the ability to work. One of the things that officers were very careful on with this one as well, sir, was seeing how the different permissions work and interrelate with each other. What we don't want to be, and you'll see that when we come on to operational hours, for example, you don't want to be in a position whereby you've got different and conflicting conditions, shall we say, or requirements. So that's very much carried across, and it's something we use quite a bit in Cambridgeshire.
I'm going to carry on to the next condition. Yep. So the construction environmental management plan. Could you just take me through its aims?
Yes, indeed. So this would have related to group 4, which was around the residential amenity, both to occupiers of those in neighbouring areas, but also protection of animals, noise and light. So this is very much focused on the construction phase of the development, and essentially, this is why it's one of the first pre-commencement conditions, requiring the need for the mitigation measures and the controls that are going to be put in place to ensure that we can protect those amenities. Broken down in particular will range across some of the ecology-related issues, but also around some of the noise, dust, and standard issues that you can get in relation to construction, but also in the case of this one, the demolition that's been put forward as well.
Okay, no questions from me on that. Moving now to condition 10, the BAT survey.
Yes, if I may, sir. So that would come under that same grouping of residential amenity, protection of animals, noise and light again. This very much is at the request and recommendation of the ecology consultees, and it relates to potential for the bats to be disturbed, particularly around the demolition works that are proposed. This puts in the necessary controls, and I think I'm right in saying that the applicant is acknowledging of the need for that. So that kind of just brings it down, if you like, and links it through to the surveys that were created as part of the planning application stage.
Okay, thank you. And condition 11.
Yes.
That's standard construction hours.
Indeed. So again, that falls under the same grouping of residential amenity, protection of animals, noise and light, as I've put it within my records. This is very much, again, focused on the construction hours and the construction phase. And this, as you will have seen from the wording, protecting the amenity during the construction. That's, I just say that's a fairly standard one again within Cambridgeshire.
And construction drainage now, please, condition 12.
Yeah. Now, this does actually it's split across some of this, but I did actually put this within the controls for the surface water and the drainage elements. So that would have been in that group 1. But I appreciate I've got it all in front of me and I've done a tick back list, but I can totally understand yourself, sir, and the appellants aren't able to do that. So this is very much looking at ensuring, again, as a pre-commencement requirement, that we understand exactly what measures are going to be in place to avoid additional surface water runoff from the site. As I'm sure people within this room will be aware, with some of the recent events within Cambridgeshire, surface water is an issue, and certainly we have a very high water table. So ensuring that we have the details of this and the mitigation in place is seen as something fairly standard and would have included the lead local flood authority as part of a consultee.
In relation to that condition, it's a pre-commencement condition. Does it need to bar all forms of preparatory works? I note that the condition does ask for that, but what is the specific reason certain aspects couldn't be prepared?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. It's something that we raised with the lead local flood authority at the time that we were preparing the conditions. I think the way that the controls are put in place, if you like, the lead local flood authority feel it's necessary, and I have to say, as planning officers, we agreed with them that the mitigation for this needs to be understood beforehand and the design needs to be put in place. So it wasn't something that we felt elements could start, and that's why we specifically put in that kind of preparatory element in there.
Does the appellant have any further views on that?
No, they are agreed, sir. So no, that's no add.
Okay, moving on, materials, condition 13. You're referencing structures 9 meters in height. Otherwise, it seems quite a standard condition. I'm not going to
Yes.
ask
Okay,
much
so
about this.
yeah, so really this was one of the 4 that I put into the landscape and visual amenity, so what would have been group 5 in effect. As you'll have appreciated, sir, from what you've already said, not only is it's standard, but you can see that we've done it for the higher structures. So I think we've been very reasonable in the way that we've created that and the reference to the 9 meters.
Okay, hours of operation now, please. Again, this has been agreed with the appellant's team, but could you take me through why specific hours are needed?
Yes, sir. So again, so just from the perspective of the groupings, this would have been group 4, relating very much to the residential amenity, which includes that protection of animals, etc. This very much comes back to the summary I gave at the start of this session, which is the site already has, as you're aware, sir, extant permissions and already operates a number of areas on the side for the composting, etc. So what we've done is we've taken the hours of operation that apply on the existing site, taken account of how the site would work, and made sure that those controls are in place and consistent, particularly from a monitoring and enforcement perspective. They've been then reviewed by all the key consultants and specialists, and then have been considered by ourselves as planning officers. And really, this comes back down to the consistency point across the site, and also controlling the measures that are taken on site.
Okay, thank you. I know condition 15 relates to reversing vehicles and the alarms fitted. I'm not going to ask about that. And then we've got condition 16, which is the silencing of plant and machinery. Could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so again, this is one of the what I will call is standard conditions that go across many of the waste sites, and actually the mineral sites across Cambridgeshire as well. This links into recommendations made by the monitoring and enforcement team, and in particular discussions with the EHO. So as we come on to the next condition, so you'll see some of how they've actually looked into that. So again, alongside the reversing vehicles, the silencing and making sure that they're operated as required is something that is a standard feature on our conditions.
And you mentioned it's part of the overall noise mitigation package for the site. So if we could now move to condition 17 and perhaps 18 combined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some explanation on that, please.
Yep. So again, these are very much included within the grouping for the residential amenity. So what would have been group 4, and they have been very much informed by the EHO and the specialist looking at those conditions. The 17 links to the healthcare or the HERF and the dry anaerobic digestion AD plant, and the requirement for noise mitigation measures and noise monitoring to demonstrate they can comply with the noise limits. And then you can see that the noise limits are set out in condition 18, which are set as control measures for occupiers of nearby properties. So again, planning officers have been guided by the environmental health officer, and then these have been set out clearly from a monitoring perspective.
Just for clarity, the nature of the values in the table for the noise limits condition, where is the origin of those from? Is that professional negotiation stroke discussion, or is it based on the noise assessments submitted by the appellant?
Okay, sorry, I just needed to just double check my understanding of that. It is very much based on the assessment that was done, but then was very much guided by the assessment undertaken by the environmental health officer. And my understanding is that the Raptor Foundation, as an example, wasn't included in that initial report, and so that was added in and included, and that was agreed with the applicant. And I believe we're in agreement on the need for that.
Just touching on that, we've got the locations there. We've got Rectory Farm, Traveller's Site, Bridge Farm, and Heathfields. You mentioned the Raptor Foundation site. Which category does that fall in?
It was the residential aspects there, so it's Raptor Foundation residents. I'll see if I can see that it doesn't refer to maps there, so I'd understand if you'd want to consider whether there needs to be a reference to the specific locations on that. Might be something to maybe raise with the appellants.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting you to say that, given that they're agreed. They are broad noise locations. If you could look at that in the background, if there is an update to that, I'd need to know, but I'm not requesting a direct change at the moment.
So if it helps, the locations and noise levels can be found in section 18 of the officer's report. So there's a proposed future operations table in there. It's sort of after paragraph 18.5 and between 18.6. So again, I think that must be the source of where it's come from. So again, that would flow through then. So, but as it was explained, that it didn't include there the Raptor Foundation, that was put in there for the extra caution, if you like. So
yeah, but the point is, I mean, are these measurements being I suspect, sir, if I'm intuiting correctly, the point which I'd say would be a pretty spot on one is, are these being measured, for example, at the external face of the windows of these properties? Are we in fact measuring them at the gate, which might be, 50 meters away or whatever it is, which actually is quite important when it comes to noise. Yeah. pre-filled conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, that normally we see a picture of a tripod set up. I think it's 2 meters from the external wall, but it's only 2 meters because I think that's the distance that it needs to be, not to suffer from noise bouncing back off the wall too much. So it could be 5 meters, 10 meters in the middle of the garden, whatever it is. It would be good to actually pin that down. I can see that. Thank you, sir.
So I'm just actually looking at condition 17 as well, which is the noise mitigation report required. And that's going to link into some of those measures as well to make sure that they're set out in condition 18. But I do agree with what's just been said.
So if there is an update to be given on the noise limits in condition 18 or any affiliated condition, then I'd need to know that before the close of the inquiry.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we're just going to, it will be in the in the reports. We'll just make sure that we can be precise on that.
I can see there's a standard noise monitoring condition associated to that. I'm not going to ask you to regurgitate that. Condition 20, could you just explain that, please?
Yes, that's an interesting one, sir. So the new concrete hard standing wasn't actually defined in the planning application anywhere. So as planning officers, we felt the need to ensure that the amenity was protected and that area of land wasn't suddenly used for something else, particularly with close proximity to sensitive receptors. So what you'll see is we've put a condition in there to make clear that there's not going to be any storage or use of that particular area without needing to come in for some control measures.
And I can see from the list that is, in essence, to reduce the impacts of noise, odour, and bioaerosols on, I think, the occupants of the traveller's site.
Yes, that's correct,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, so moving now to, unless anybody wants to raise anything on the appellant side, I'm going to move on to access. I take it these are a suite of conditions from the Highway Authority.
Yes, they will have been informed by the consultee responses from the highway and also the way that we in Cambridgeshire control some of these aspects within the planning conditions. So again, some of these will carry over and certainly are ones that we use on other sites. In relation to condition 21 in particular, that I have grouped that under the highway capacity and safety. And as you'll see from that particular condition, it's being extremely explicit as to where the HGV vehicles entrance needs to be used. And I think when you go out on site as part of your site visit, you'll understand the reasons for that. And also why we discussed with the applicant about a routing agreement and how the safest way to get HGVs in and out of that site is.
So condition 22, I take it as read. It's the prevention of mud and debris on the highway. I've got no questions on that. That's a standard condition. Vehicle movements on condition 23. Could you explain why the cap on 190 vehicle movements?
Yeah, so this links in with the assessment, the transport assessment that was done at the planning application stage, and it ensures that what has been considered from a highway safety perspective and movements for the site adhere to that. And I think I did say during the planning committee when it was raised that just because those limits are on there doesn't mean that the applicant is actually going to be using that on a daily basis. That's just to make sure that that highway safety and capacity issue isn't exceeded on that site per day.
And so just to add to that, I mentioned the Highway Authority. That's the only, as I understand it, the only real principal comment they made on the highway aspects of things. They did ask for this condition to be imposed with those limits. So.
Just for clarity, that is maximum vehicle movements, and you mentioned just now that the appellant might not breach that and go anywhere near that per day. So it also says 95 in and 95 out as the split, which I acknowledge. I don't have any further questions on this. I can see in the next condition, condition 24, there is a record of HCV movements. In tandem with condition 23. I don't have any comments on that. Okay, you mentioned the routing agreements. Could you just explain for the benefit of the members of the public the HCV routing condition, please, 25?
Yes, sir. So again, this comes under what I've grouped as the highway capacity and safety, but actually it's quite a standard measure that we put in place within Cambridgeshire, and we have it on a number of our sites, both minerals and waste. Principal idea being that unless there is some emergency and some reason why they would move away from that particular routing agreement, for example, if a road was closed, etc. The idea is that you have a approved route that's been considered by the Highway Authority that tries wherever possible to avoid HCV movements through villages. And I think politically that's a huge concern for our members at the County Council.
Okay, moving on now, we've got a suite of conditions, it seems, relating to sustainable transport. If you could just very briefly explain the nature of those.
Yes, sir. So very much build on the sustainability and the measures put in place as a whole council. So what we have when we have our transport assessment, they're also looking at sustainable travel and making sure facilities are there should workers, for example, choose to use a cycle, for example, to go into that site. The electric vehicle charging point, again, is comes really under our climate change aspirations as well, to make sure that when you're delivering any new development, that you are creating the ability for them to be able to use more sustainable vehicles. And I think it was shown within the application that that was possible and already exists on the site. So.
Okay, thank you. I would note at this point, inspectors have discretionary powers to alter a condition if they're minded to. Just for the benefit of the members of the public here. So if there are any adaptations that is able to be done by an inspector, if it's wholesale changes, it normally involves a consultation process with the appellant and the council, but I would just mention that. So with that in mind, there is a few more left. I think we've got lighting. Again, if you could just explain why that's needed, please.
Yeah, so when officers have assessed the application, they've assessed the details that have been proposed. What we do, and it again is quite standard on our sites, is we make sure that no external lights can be installed in the site unless we have a strategy that's been submitted to and approved in writing by us, which then allows the opportunity for the environmental health officer, but also our ecology officers as well, to look at it from not only the perspective of the residential amenity, but also the amenity to wildlife. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the minutes and the
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the recording of the planning committee, but that's one of the conditions in particular that members were very much focused in on, and whether there was a need to strengthen that in any way, or to ensure that we were controlling it in the right way. But again, it's a fairly standard condition that is brought about around conversations with the EHO, but also our ecologists.
Understood, thank you. Surface water drainage now, please.
Yeah, so this very much builds upon what we were talking about in relation to surface water controls. We talked about the construction phase. This now is moving on to the actual creation of hard surfaces or erections of buildings and laying of surfaces, etc. So again, this condition is something fairly standard that the Lead Local Flood Authority will have put in as a statutory consultee, and this is being built on for this site. So the idea being to prevent the increased risk of flooding, to improve and protect water quality, and to improve the habitat and amenity. So again, this would have been viewed and discussed and considered as part of the Environment Agency's response as well, which when we come on to condition 30 in a moment is very much one of their standard conditions.
And we discussed condition 3. Is there any linkage to condition 3 or any duplication with it?
So the condition 3 is pre-commencement, and we did talk about that, including preparatory work element as well, to include the measures as they start some of the smaller works. This is very much the longer term. So I think I wouldn't be at all surprised if the applicant, appellant, if they were granted permission, would put those in at the same time to demonstrate both elements.
I take it the appellant has no comments on this.
That's right, sir. Thank you.
Okay, condition 30 now, please. Storage of oils, fuels and chemicals.
Yeah, so I just alluded to that very briefly. It's something that the Environment Agency encourages us to put on our conditions and is fairly standard across our waste and also mineral sites as well. And that's really focused in on the protection of pollution, particularly of the water environment and escape.
Understood, thank you. 31 now, please. Landscape planting. There are a few highlights on the copy I've got.
You're very lucky, sir, because the version I was looking at last night didn't have the highlighting. So I had the fun of reading both conditions to work out what the what the amendments were. So this, when we come on to 31, 32, 33, I group these all in what would have been group 5 for the landscape and visual amenity. 31, as you'll be aware, there are some agreed amendments in the statement of common ground, and in particular, these reference to the on-site and off-site works. The principle being here, landscape planting is very important, as we've heard about across the examination to date. And one of the things that was discussed as part of that statement of common ground is the fact that the bunds that surround the perimeter bunds on the site aren't actually included within the red line boundary. So when we come on to the amendments to 31 and 32, that was to very much take account of those and ensure that any of that landscape planting includes those areas and makes the best to protect the areas as far as possible.
And for the avoidance of any doubt, this relates to land within the appellant's control.
It does so, and it goes back to that discussion we had earlier about the site area in condition 4, because that talks about the blue land, if you like. So again, that is the site, obviously the application site or site, and then the blue land as well. So
you'll have picked up, sir, that we spotted this going through the conditions, and we realised the suggested conditions needed to be changed to ensure the bunds were bound.
Okay, so condition 32 is maintenance of soft landscaping. You touched on that in reference to 31. I'm not going to ask any further questions about that. Condition 33, biodiversity net gain. If you could explain the nature of that and what it's given an overview of what it's seeking, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. This condition has been informed again by the County Council's ecologist and is looking at the biodiversity net gain to make sure that's secured and very much linked to the design of the early landscape planting. So actually, I think it's fair to say that conditions 31 and 33 will probably be looked at together and probably submitted by the appellant together. Want me to build upon that anymore? Are you happy with that?
I was just reading through it. If you could just give me a few minutes just to read through it. The only comments I'd have is it refers to the DEFRA guidance or the latest DEFRA guidance. Is there specific guidance you've got in mind?
So it's a very interesting question. So with the Environment Act and the DEFRA, I'm trying to think of the correct. I'm probably not going to be able to bring it up off the top of my head, but there is actually a.
Are you thinking of the metric?
Yes, that's it. The metric that allows you to calculate it. So I think what was being covered by the ecology officer within this condition is to make sure that the correct metric at the point of submission was coming in to calculate that biodiversity net gain. But as you'll appreciate, so with the Environment Act, etc., it's still very much evolving and we're still waiting for certain elements to come out. That has come in now. We do note that this was done ahead of that Act coming and that legislation coming in. However, the applicant is aware of the aspirations of the county and also how it links into the landscaping. So I think that's fair to say that's why they've agreed that condition.
I've got no further comments on this. There might be national guidance as well applicable in tandem with the DEFRA guidance. But I've got nothing else to raise on that. So that brings the conditions to an end, unless anybody on the appellant side wants to raise anything further.
No, so we'll discuss, I think condition 18 was the outstanding kind of homework. So we'll discuss that in terms of any changes that needs in terms of precision. So.
Okay, thank you. And the council doesn't want to raise anything further, I take it?
No, thank you very much.
So that brings the conditions discussion to an end. We're going to now move to site visit arrangements, but I think there's a bit of discussion on this going on between the parties. So I'm going to convene for 10 minutes. We'll take a pause just to allow some discussions to go on, and then I'll come back and start discussing the site visit arrangements for tomorrow. So we'll have a pause there for 10 minutes and then reconvene at 10:40. Thank you. just so everyone knows, I'm going to give another 10 minutes just to allow some printing of some materials. So just bear with me. Thank you.
So thank you for your patience. I think that's been circulated now.
We just had a break just now to allow some printing of some material. It's slightly longer than what I anticipated, but it's now with me. So I'm going to resume the inquiry. There are a few people still filtering in, possibly, but I think everyone's here. So I'm going to start. We're going to be discussing the site visit arrangements. And this is for an unaccompanied visit for me tomorrow. I'm going to invite Mr. Burton to explain where he wants me to see the site from. There is some material being distributed amongst the parties, but if it's not Mr. Burton, the person who wants to be the representative for this, please.
So just to be clear, so that members of the public understand it. So the route that I think Mr. Burton is going to refer to now, which is the document you have in front of you, is a route that has been agreed principally between the two landscape architects who've given evidence to the inquiry, and reflects principally the viewpoints that have been identified as illustrative viewpoints. So that's how the document has come about, from the joint input of Mrs. Bean on the one hand and Mr. Reynolds on the other hand.
That's correct, sir. Now, what is also agreed, but you won't see it on this sheet here, is we are both expecting you, for example, to drive up and down the B1040 that becomes the B1086, and no doubt up and down the other roads in the study area. That is assumed. What we have tried to do is, in what the landscape visual experts have tried to do, is order the viewpoints in a way that seems to them to have some logic, wherever they possibly could, give you a hopefully helpful suggestion as to where you could safely, we are assuming you'll be driving this, so that you can safely pull off, find somewhere to park your car on the verge or whatever it is, where you will be safe, and you can then not worry about that. And there are, I think, some agreed suggestions in here as to merely the directions you might look in, but with no text about whatsoever about what you might see there. So obviously that's all left for you to take a view of what you see. But it's intended as a sensible order, but written into it that you will also be, and I know you'll be ranging widely, but you will also be going up and down the roads in any event. And we deliberately didn't get into what would have been a very lengthy and probably inconclusive attempt to agree that you should stop and look at everything that's been mentioned in the course of the inquiry, because we would be here forever and we'd never agree that, if that makes sense. So, thank you.
All understood, thank you. So the viewpoints with me, there's a series of about 12 viewpoints altogether. It doesn't really come as a bolt from the blue which viewpoints these are, because they are focusing on the landscaping visual impact evidence. So I've got viewpoints from Luntersham Heath Road, various points along there, Old Church Lane, Colne, the pasture, Somersham, Pidley Hill, Old Hurst Road, Pidley, I've got viewpoints from the road towards Oldhurst from Pidley, Sheep Lane Farm. But that would be the B1040 on Sheep Lane. I've got Cuckoo Bridge Nursery on there. Again, that would be from public land, viewing the surroundings. Viewpoint 8 includes St. Ives Road in the vicinity of the Raptor Foundation. Again, no surprises there. Wheatsheaf Road, viewpoint 9. I've got some viewpoints from the footpath south of Woodhurst. And I've got some further viewpoints on Somersham Road in the vicinity of what's described as A&S Fenner bathrooms. I've also got a viewpoint from a joinery, MRJ Joinery on Somersham Road. Again, that would be near the entrance points from public vantage points, not going onto private land in order to do this. It is public vantage points that I'm concentrating on. There have been some requests in the background to visit private land. I'm not going to do that. There is enough for me to see the site, the surroundings without doing that. So it is the public vantages I'm going to be concentrating on in the manner explained by the advocates by way of reference to the landscape professionals, which we've heard evidence on. I'm not seeking to go over this in any more detail. I'll have a good look at the site, the surroundings, the interconnected roads in reaching some of these vantage points. I'm already familiar with the digital material, and also I've got an understanding of the local area based on public vantage points. So I don't have any further comments, but I'm going to seek any comments if they have any from the council before I carry on.
No, just that it's 14. So you obviously hadn't had a chance yet to count up, but it's 14 viewpoints, and they represent viewpoints 1 to 11 and viewpoints A, C, and D. So they correspond to the viewpoints identified in evidence. And so can I just, in case you were going to take the hard copy document with you to assist you on the site visit, if you look at the accompanying plan or map, if you look to the immediate southeast of the site, you'll see a yellow box where the number hasn't come up in the printing. So you might just want to annotate that is viewpoint 10. I think it shows on the electronic version, but it doesn't show on the hard copy version.
Right, yes. Just to explain, the physical copy presented to me just now has 12 viewpoints. Oh, sorry, it does have 14. I beg your pardon. And I've got an electronic version as well of a similar nature. So I'm going to take those into account. I've noted Mr. Grant's reference to the extra viewpoint labelling. Is there anything else?
Not from me, thank you.
Does the appellant? Yeah.
Please take into consideration a nice sunny day and not something that might be cloudy or misty.
Yeah, I think you've read my mind, because there is scope to do it today as well. So, yeah, if the weather is against me tomorrow, I'll be doing it today, or so there is flexibility. Does the appellant want to raise anything? Okay. There was an additional member of the public who missed this morning, there's a lady who wanted to raise something. I am going to allow her to speak because she hasn't had an opportunity. If you'd like to introduce yourself and make the points you want to make.
That on, yeah. So I'm Charlotte and I live just down the road from Envar, about just
Sorry, could I
under-
get your surname as well?
Yeah, Holiday.
Holiday.
Charlotte Holiday, yeah. And so where I live, we live at Bridge Farm. We've got our 3 children, 4, 1 and 5 months. And I mean, at the moment, I noticed there were some things that were said within the planning hours. Now, they don't work within their permitted hours as they do. So they work out of hours and it wakes our children up. We have spoken to the Environment Agency, logged it with them. And my husband actually went up to the site himself after getting nowhere with the Environment Agency and trying to contact their office number, which isn't answered. And he actually ended up with no outcome. They were literally just carried on doing what they'd done. They rang the police after my husband had left, handed over a video to the police of my husband on Envar and asked for them to hand over a band so that he's banned from the Envar site. So we can't actually go up there if they're working outside hours to say, look, you're waking the children up or anything. That was the first time he's been up there and the only time. The police actually laughed at the fact that they had gone down that route instead of just being, you know, like neighbours would. They would turn around normally, you know, speak to one another. We tried that approach. They took that approach and the police just thought it was absolutely ridiculous and a waste of police time. So if anything like that happens during the planning and the whole building, if it does go through, where do we stand for all of that? If they're working outside their hours and they're waking up our children. And also the lady showed me the bands of the noise. Now at night time, it is considerably louder, which I've got videos of. And I'm going to send them over to the lady at the back. Where they are working outside of their hours, they're scraping the digger buckets along the concrete. And that's all going to carry on because they're not completely getting rid of that to put an incinerator up. So we're going to have a double whammy of incinerator and them scraping the digger buckets along and our children saying, or like our 3-year-old, well, he was 3 at the time because he's only just turned 4, saying they're making noise up there and it's waking me up. So I don't really find that fair in itself. I mean, also, I think, you know, like the nursery was pointing out that there's children there. And I don't mean this in a harsh way, but obviously the children that are going there, that is by their choice. Like we live on our farm and our nephew's on the farm behind. And on that farm, well, he's only just turned 1. There's another 1-year-old on that farm. And then obviously opposite us, there's Simon, and he's got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. So there is a lot of children which are outdoors on the land, and they've already stated that there will be an effect to children's health. So that, to me, is a bit of a concern in my eyes, because like this is their lives. They're on the farms, they're outside, they're outdoor children. And it's not like there's just 1 or 2, there's all of those children. Then there's the ones on the traveller's site, then there's a nursery. So, you know, these farms that I'm on about are within a mile. And I haven't, that's only going towards St Ives. That's not going towards Blantysham and carrying on down the heath because there's more children down there. There's quite a big picture and it's like, you know, we have light pollution from them anyway. We have to have blackout curtains because of all the lights on their barns that they've put up, which we have spoken to them about. when I spoke to James, the bloke who's just sat there, about noise when we went up with my dad, because my dad lives on the farm behind. My dad asked several questions, and one of mine was, you know, why do those beepers need to be on if you know, at night time? Because the beepers are loud as well, you know, the reversing beepers on the vehicles. They turned them off until I stood up and spoke in St Ives, and then the beepers went back on. So that doesn't seem like they're good neighbours whatsoever to me, if they can't even, you know, because I stood up and said I didn't want it, which I don't think anyone would want their children to be around, that sort of thing. The beepers got put on the same, literally the same week. So they went off from being off for months to then being put back on as soon as I stood up and said no. So, I mean, those are little things that do concern me. That would be little to you guys, but to me, it's quite a big thing, because this is my life on their doorstep.
You mentioned noise complaints.
Yeah.
You mentioned the EA.
Yeah.
You raised a question. How would that be dealt with?
Yeah.
It's things like of that nature, or the nature of the permit, etc. It would be the enforcing authority who deals with any existing alleged issue.
And then going forward, would it be the same
I-
people, same team?
Well, we've discussed today a series of conditions. If the Secretary of State was minded to grant consent, and those conditions, the idea is that those conditions are enforceable.
Yeah.
And it would be the local planning authority, i.e. the county council, who's the enforcing authority for the conditions. But as you mentioned, the EA may also have enforcement type powers for certain aspects, and you mentioned those, but I'm not going to expand on that any further. I have record of your points and your concerns, comments. I'm not going to ask you any further questions.
No.
Is there anything else you wish to raise?
No, I think it just needs to be taken into consideration that there is young children out on the farms, working farms, not, you know, and it's going to be affecting them and the next generation. And when we're supposed to be, you know, all of the supermarkets state so much that they are supporting British farming, that isn't going to drive British farming within the area. It's going to slowly work it out of the area. I mean, all the agricultural barns that are around the area state how much of an agricultural area it actually is. And if you look on Google Maps, you can see like that it is an agricultural area that is all farmland with grain stores and livestock barns. Those are the sorts of barns that are around.
Okay, yeah, I've noted those.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there anything else you want to take into
No,
account?
that's everything. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burton.
Thank you, sir. Maybe I think it is related actually to what Ms. Holliday has just said. I think we've been looking at, just to bring you up, so we've been looking at obviously the noise condition, and as you would expect, I don't think we're quite there yet, but as you would expect, there are dedicated noise assessments in the environmental statement. They're in the CDs, and they give the precise locations at which the noise was measured. So I think looks like we've got a solution for that. Miss Holliday at Bridge Farm, of course, is one of the specific locations. as well. So I think we should be able to get you a draft condition pretty soon, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. I think that completes everything today, unless anybody else wants to raise anything from the council. No. So I'm going to be conducting my site visit either later on today or tomorrow. And there will be closings from both of the sides on Friday. And there'll be no further comments from members of the public invited, because it will just be for the closing statements. So I'm going to adjourn on that basis, and I'll turn to Mr. Burton just before I do that.
So it's just regarding timings on Friday. This is a very a selfish request, as it were, on the part of my team. Would it be possible, and we've discussed our respective timings, would it be possible to perhaps start at 10 or 10:15? We'd still have ample time to be done by lunchtime, but it means that those who wouldn't be staying overnight could make it.
Yes, I don't have any objections to that. Presumably the council are happy with that.
Entirely flexible,
Yeah.
say for that, you know, I've got to be finished by 2 o'clock. I've got another hearing,
Right,
but with that caveat,
Yeah.
I'm entirely flexible.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
10 o'clock will be fine. So yeah, we'll resume then 10 o'clock on
okay.
Friday.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Okay, so the inquiries pause for now until Friday. Thank you.